Hello, y'all. Man, that was, Mijan's a hard act to follow. All of y'all are hard acts to follow. I'll tell you this, I want to thank Rashawn for allowing me to be black in all this blackness. Happy Black History Month, if you didn't know. February's got an extra day this month, just so you know. Just so you know. When I saw the lineup, and I've admired, like, as an MC, like I call myself a rapper sometimes. This gentleman is a professional rap artist. And so I've admired Rashawn's work for so long. We know a few of the same producers. And it's just, we never had opportunity to really get together because I'm a dad and we're all busy. He's busy, he's touring, I'm busy. I know Mijan, I've admired Mijan and her work since she's been doing the same empowerment work she was doing with young people here in media and radio, to the work that she's now doing with women leaders, like in her house and in her kitchen, and organizing these leadership development workshops, and then just admiring her as a parent. I study other parents, that's how I learned how to parent, and having the pleasure of having known her father. And so I was like, wow, all 3 black people are gonna be in the room, and that's more than the 2 that you usually talk about, right? That's different than Peter Parker and Spider-Man in the same room, right? But these other black people, god damn. Y'all are amazing. You're all amazing. Your stories give me life. Yeah, it's crazy. So what do I want to talk about? How do I want to be vulnerable? Thank you, Taz. Before I came here, I actually just left the New Mexico State Penitentiary. I did a workshop for Black History Month with a bunch of black men, because that's where you go to see more of us in one spot, unfortunately, in this country. I saw more black men in that room than I've probably seen in a month. And we had some time to spend with them, just kind of saying something that we hoped would help. Because that's what I do for a living. Like when I'm not being a bureaucrat in Albuquerque for the city of Albuquerque, I'm a poet. So I'm always hoping that I say something that matters, or something that cares, or something that people will remember. And I just think it's beautiful to be in here. Like, y'all been listening for almost 2 hours. People don't listen to each other that long in America. This is crazy. Like, this is a thing. It's a church. You know that, right? You know it's a church, right? Like, the therapy is out there, not up here. You know that, right? If we cared more about each other's stories on a daily basis, man, there's no limit to what we could accomplish. So the story I wanted to bring today was I was gonna say, nowhere near as deep as what we just heard, but I wanted to talk about something that I think is like just unusual and uninformed. So I tell people that I was the inaugural poet laureate of Albuquerque. That happened. That happened in 2012. I don't know what Albuquerque was thinking, to be honest, but that's what happened. And so I served a 2-year term where I was the inaugural poet laureate. And 3 questions always occur when you tell someone you're the inaugural poet laureate of fill in the blank, right? And first they say, well, what's a poet laureate? And then they say, how did that happen? And then they say, how did that happen to you? Right? And so in a short answer, a little bit longer answer, and then end with the longest answer, I'll address all 3 of those questions. What is a poet laureate? You're a ceremonial poet of any city, municipality, hamlet, country, whatever society is crazy enough to think that they want somebody to write poems about who they are and where they live. I like to dumb that down as to, like, for 2 years, I got paid this much money to write love poems about my city. And that's our topic tonight, love, right? And so I got to do that for 2 years. And it was great that I got paid this much to do it, but I would have did it anyway. Because like was discussed here, actually, like, I love Albuquerque. Albuquerque brought me all the way from Philadelphia and South Jersey here and literally put me on their shoulders and walked me through the streets like we had won the Super Bowl and we do not have a professional football team in New Mexico. So, and I was like, it's easy to love a place like that. It's so easy to love a place that loves you. Even with the occasional nigger, thank you, Taz, that happens. But by and large, the experience being here has been something where it's like, it's unbelievable. It is otherworldly. It leans right into all this space shit we like to talk about, right? So the second question was, how? How did that happen? Well, I wanted to bring into the room tonight a poet that came down from Colorado Springs, actually Salida, that's how you say it, Salida, Colorado, by the name of Stuart Warren. He passed away a year and a half ago, but he lived up there. And when I did my first thing I got invited to get paid money, to read a poem, which was wild for a kid from Philadelphia, because I was like, usually people never want to hear what somebody that looks like me has to say, and now they're gonna put me on a stage and pay me money to do that? I was like, that's crazy, right? And so Don McIver took me up there, and I did his poem, and I met this guy, Stuart Warren, and Stuart Warren was like the hippie guy where the acid never wore off, and he was just on that trip and stayed on that trip, but he was all about love and hugs, and I fell in love with Stuart. He brought me out back for a few more festivals between whenever I went and whenever we stopped going up there, and then he moved down here. And when he moved down here, he met these poets in Albuquerque, and he was like, yo, y'all got it going on. And he was like, Colorado has a poet laureate. He's like, Colorado Springs has a poet laureate, Denver has a poet laureate, and I'm sorry if you're from Colorado. He was like, y'all are way better than them cats. Y'all should have a poet laureate here, right? So he started talking to the people who were my mentors, and I ended up joining a committee to kind of say, look, we're gonna advocate for that. And we didn't want it to be crazy like one of those poet laureates where like the governor chooses their best friend's wife to be poet laureate. We actually wanted a process that was actually gonna be by the people. And so we actually got in bed with the McCune Charitable Foundation. Some of you know McCune Charitable Foundation. And they were like, okay, let's create a process, right? And they were like, you get to make up a committee of 5 people in your community. There's gotta be a seat for a young person. There's got to be a seat for somebody at an arts organization. There's got to be a seat for a publishing entity. But there also has to be another performance poet and then somebody who does some work in a community organization that's unrelated to the arts. And those 5 people will debate and deliberate after a lengthy application process, and they'll go away off into a mountain like jurors often do. And they'll come back with a unanimous decision through a consensus model process. So they're there till they agree, right? And then they come back and they say, hey, this is gonna be your poet laureate for the next 2 years, right? And so somewhere in that process, when we were developing this whole process and gathering the money that was gonna be part of it, and I was on the organizing committee, I didn't know ambitions or desires to actually be the poet laureate of Albuquerque. I had a really strong belief that like I'm not from here, it should be somebody from here. And then I went home that Christmas and I got really ill, like hospitalized ill. And actually the deadline came and went. And then there was an extension because they didn't feel like they had enough applicants. And I got a call from Stuart and Don McIver, one of my other mentors, and they were like, Hakim, man, we were talking about signs earlier, right? Hakim, man, come on. They made it longer just for you. You should submit, right? You should submit something. And I remember at my time, my dad passed away this summer, and I remember my time having this conversation with my father, who is the opposite of an artist. He's a military guy, he's been his whole life in computers. His favorite, loud colors were brown, gray, and blue, navy blue. It was the loudest shit he would wear. Like, he wouldn't even wear white. He'd be like, oh, it's too bright, right? You know what I'm saying? So, me and my dad are very different people. He grew up in South Carolina. I grew up outside of Philadelphia. So, and that was that. But he looked at me and he said, when he got his calling to the ministry, he said it came in a dream. And I was in my first year of college when he got that call to the ministry. And I was like, that sounds like something a minister would say. Whatever, Dad. And I don't know if it was the drugs that I was on when I was sick or what it was, but I actually dreamt about not being a poet laureate of Albuquerque. It wasn't even what it was. It was like being some kind of crazy storyteller where you would tell stories, and for every one story you told, someone else would tell you 5 back in return, and there was like this story banking thing happening. And crazy part is that this many years later, every time I get on stage, no matter where I'm at, now tonight it was contrived because there were already 7 stories, right? But if this was just like a regular like coffee house, you read your poem, and then you're in the parking lot smoking, or you're waiting for your cup of chai. Someone comes up to you and says, hey man, can I read you something? Can I share something with you? Yeah, I like that poem you put out there. I felt that. Would you share, would you mind, would you take a second? All these people just listen to you run your mouth. Would you take a second to stand over here and let me read my poem to you for 90 seconds, right? And I didn't know that's what this was gonna be. I just know I had a weird dream because I was probably high off of whatever cold medicine I was on. And I had the time. That was the other part where the universe came in. I had the time. Like, I was sick, I was home. When I go home on vacation, I'm not Albuquerque Hakim Bellamy. I'm like the kid who grew up there nobody cares about because I grew up here and I'm a knucklehead, right? And so and occasionally I go hang out with my friends, and most times I lay around the house and chill with my family. And so I did this lengthy application, and I sent it in. And said that, I was like, if Albuquerque wants me, Albuquerque will want me. If not, they won't. In January of that year, I moved back. I went back home. January, I was home for Christmas break. I went back home. I actually had I was on a slam team the year prior, and I had a relationship with the previous mayor, Mayor Barry, and he became a fan, and he was Republican. He became a fan of the poetry slam team, and yeah, I guess Republicans listen to poetry too. But sorry, is that mean? I'm sorry. Anyway. Not the kind of poetry I write, but anyway, but he was a fan, and I remember him asking me in January if I would write a poem for the centennial. For those of you who don't know, and I know we got this sister city thing going on, so if I'm talking too much about Albuquerque, whatever. But it was their centennial, 2012. It was 100 years of being an American city. Obviously, people lived here before that. I always feel compelled to say that when I talk about this. But that was 100 years of the United States government saying, hey, you're cool, you could be down with us, right? And so he had asked me to write a poem for the centennial. I don't think that he knew that somewhere out here in the world there was a whole movement to get a poet laureate for Albuquerque. So I said yes to him because I was like, yeah, sure. And then I was terrified and almost, peed my pants. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then time went on, and come April was when we were going to announce. In February, I got a call, and they were like, Hakim, they picked you. You're it. And I was like, well, that's convenient, because if there was a poet laureate and me reading at the centennial, that would be awkward. So it worked out for Mayor Barry, because that would have been awkward. But now the heat was really on. The heat was on because now I'm getting ready to stand on Civic Plaza. And at that year on our Summer Fest on Civic Plaza, we had, I was going to say Ozomatli, it was Los Lobos. So they're the headliner, right? And they have all these other bands, and then it's getting closer, and they're deciding, like, Hakim Bellamy, you're the new poet laureate, we're gonna announce you there, and you're gonna read your centennial poem right before Los Lobos goes on. I'm like, that's a bad idea. That is a really bad idea. It's a really bad idea. So I do the only thing I know how to do, and I reach out to one of my professors, who was actually on my thesis committee at the time at UNM. And ironically enough, he was just named the poet laureate of the state of New Mexico, Levi Romero. And Levi takes me to this spot, Los Compadres, that's right by the biopark downtown Albuquerque. It's his favorite spot. Whenever you have a question for him as a student, that's where he does his office hours. So we go down there, and if you're a good student, you buy him lunch. But we go down there, and he sits me down, and he starts asking me questions. And he was like, so what do you think you're gonna write about? And I was like, I don't know, Levi. I was like, you're from here. You're from New Mexico, grew up in Dixon, but you've been here a long time, went to UNM. What should I write about? And he was like, whatever you do, don't write about lowriders, right? Whatever you do, don't write about roadrunners. He's like, write about yourself. Write about how much you love this place, because anything else, it'll be phony, and people will be able to see right through you. Right through you. He's like, so find an actual genuine connection to this place. Mind you, I came here in 2005, so 2007 I've been here 7 years, right? I've been here 7 years. I felt like I kind of knew what the vibe was. I was happy here. I was making some money doing some poetry. Everything was working out for me. My son had been born here. He's a native Nuevo Mexicano, born at UNM. And I was like, I know some things. I think I can write about this. And it was crazy because in between that time when Levi and I had our lunch, I had to fly home and then briefly fly back. I think it was Easter or something. Because Summerfest wasn't until later. It was in June or something like that. It was warmer. But I flew home and I was stumped. There's nothing I could think of. I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm gonna write about. And as literally as the plane's leaving and you're taking off from the sunport, you start to, how you cut the mountains and you get outside the box, right? And then this thing just came flooding out of me. And it came flooding out of me all the way through my transfer. And I got home and I sat at the kitchen table, my mom and dad's kitchen table, and I wrote the rest of this first long love poem to my city. And that's a little bit of the how. But the why me, I think, is the more interesting part. And I think the why me is because it had to be. I didn't know that, I didn't want that in the beginning, but I feel like what I learned from being poet laureate was actually that even in a space like this, where there are so few of us black folk, that they would pick somebody that looks nothing like them, with a perspective nothing like theirs, and then let me interpret my life and my light through the prism of myself, and it would kind of hit the mountains in that kind of fractaled way, that kind of prism way that things do, and that prism and that rainbow would look just like all the people here, and they would somehow find a connectivity in what I said to what they said. I feel like that's what I needed. Like, I don't know if I don't know if the universe or whatever God you do and don't believe in did it for Albuquerque, but it did it for me, for sure, because it changed my life. Now, when I go places and I read, I feel like people are seeing me, and like Levi said, not seeing right through me. And as black men in this country, we are either hyper visible or invisible, right? And so if I can put something out there that actually isn't me at all, it's really just a mirror and they can see themselves, all of a sudden I've accomplished something. I've accomplished something, right? And so that's what this whole process gave to me, right? A way to kind of be me out loud, a way to be me in public, a way to not hide from myself and find that confidence in myself. And as it grows, I get to do things like I got to do today and go help other people find that same thing through the thing that gave it to me, writing and being in public, you know? My dad did this, but he did it for God. I do it for something else. Who knows what I do it for? But I certainly get something out of it, and I hope other people do too. So that's been my journey, and that's how I got here. So when they say what is it, how did it happen, and why you, that's the only way I know how to frame it. So I'm gonna actually leave you with that poem that I wrote then. And I've written lots of love poems for my city since. But I feel like this was the first time that I actually got it. I feel like all the poems I'd written before it, I was pretending to be Albuquerque, or pretending to be something that Albuquerque would like, right? And then all of a sudden I arrived at this moment, and the stakes was high. Stakes was high. On that plaza that day, I'm told there were about 11,000 people before Los Lobos. They've exceeded that twice. The Women's March, yeah, and the Holly Holm UFC Victory Parade. Yes. I'm a solid three. So, no, they ain't come to hear me. They came to hear Los Lobos. Come on, people. Let's come to hear me. It's a song. It's called 100 Years of Corridos, a song for the New Mexico Centennial. In the first, time out. So when y'all walked in this building, you walked in this little door here. You saw my friends at the New Mexico Coalition for Literacy make some noise. Ooh, ooh, ooh. They do good work. But if you didn't notice on where like the prime times and the magazines are, there's a big book there that says The Legend of La Llorona, and it says Rudolfo Anaya on the bottom. That's gonna be important when you leave. Okay, back to the poem. 100 Years of Corridos, a song for the New Mexico Centennial. In the first chapter of the Gospel according to Anaya, Rudolfo writes, all of the older people spoke only Spanish, and I myself understood only Spanish in English. Bienvenidos, Albuquerque. I myself only understand English in Diné. We speak many languages but mean the same thing, and mañana will mean more of the same. Family, food, fiesta, forever. Come on and sing along. We're going to familia, comida, fiesta, forever. For 100 years BC, before the Commodores, before Lionel Richie, and for 100 years more, we have farmed, feasted, and fixed cars. We have moved people and mixed razas. We've got an appointment with the curandera as soon as we leave the doctor. A lust for livestock like chupacabras, afraid of God and the inexplicable. Dinosaur fossils, so in love with space and the people who live there that we speak Chewbacca. The 47th state admitted to the Union, we might as well have been the moon of Endor to our forefathers. With the oldest and highest state capital in the country, people on both coasts should look up to us instead of wondering if they have to exchange their money before coming. Yes, dollars is our official currency too. And though we don't have much of it, money can't buy cultura. Our history book, the King Alfonso version, is a canon of wars and peace. A Bible of you and me that was written in Madrid by missionaries and mestizos. We are men of magic and women of wizardry who speak and spell in song, wing words and fly them like a flag, all yellow between red and green like a traffic light, like the state question is hurry up or slow down, never stop. All of the older people sung only corridos, but in those corridos, I only heard gospel. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's the stage, but every time I hear the clap of thunder, it sounds like a blessing. Every time I hear the pitter-patter of rain, it sounds like a round of applause. And even the monsoons roar encores, the flash bloods flood our hearts with love. After 100 New Year's Eves of trying to puncture precipitation, where the sky never dies and the clouds wear bulletproof vests, where we perpetually live in the shadow of a hot air balloon eclipse. We are not a city that speaks good morning. We are a city that speaks mass ascension, like grandpa only spoke Spanish when he was drinking Buenos Dias, like grandma only spoke Latin when she was praying Buenas noches, where water is so sacred and scarce that we pot it in puddles on our flat roofs, pool it in vestibule stoops of steepled temples where pigeons swirl and roost, pond it in mountaintops on our not so flat horizons where we bottle it in our bodies and then set fire to it in our forests where it sounds like a Sakia's babble. Amen. And bosques smell like baptisms and the rain doesn't speak any language. It only understands dance. And sometimes we miss it so much, it takes 2 rainbows to promise us it is coming back. After thousands of years of owners for this little piece of hacienda, it's been us as tenants together, roommates for the past 100. Call it a Zia-shaped symbol for eternity over our right ring finger. Call it the interconnectedness of cultures. Call it married to each other. Speak now or forever hold your chisme. We are actions speak louder than wordsmiths, storytelling rituals where we don't speak project runway, we cowboy cosmopolitan, urban traditional, where our children dare not say or see kakui or la llorona, but are lucky Santa speaks Spanglish and has a sweet tooth for leche y bizcochitos, where birthdays are miracles and each one has a spirit, Holy Spirit or patron saint, where we celebrate 100 today. In the beginning, the greatest spirit created America and the earth, and it was bueno. I don't speak perfect English, barely speak passable Spanish, but it's okay, because there's no such thing as perfect English, except for the word, Nuevo Mexico. Thank you.